Good morning from Bordeaux. Like many of you, perhaps you were awake during the night when the news came from the Middle East, the suggestions of a ceasefire, various people saying various things about it. The most significant suggestion was that the Israelis have asked for a ceasefire from Iran, and the discursive debate in Washington, of course, puts this in another perspective. But the larger point, I hesitate to use the word zooming out a bit, is that yet again, the Iran Israeli war has highlighted the importance of Asian studies and, and raised a challenge for us about how to do our job as well as we are able. I know there's a paradox which hangs over all such discussions of what academics who are specialists in Asia should do about Asia and Asian politics and Asian developments. And the paradox which hangs over us, and it's sad but true, is that the Asian expert tends to be believed when he's wrong and tends to be ignored when she's right. This seems to be almost inescapable, but nevertheless, we must try to do our thing. What strikes me about the reporting and the analysis, and again, one of the most significant changes, which probably is emblematic of the war, of the Iran-Israeli war, is the importance of social media and how this relates to the work of the scholar, academic, and institutional forms. And I think some of the beauty of the situation is that however legacy makes us sound passe, there are things we can do. And one of them is to keep social media as honest as possible and consistent. Difficult to do, a great deal of going around, and a great deal of paid for narrative creation going on. And so the point is to hold the fort and say, now, this is what it means. It may be a little bit of cleaning up after something to get the story straight, what actually did happen, and then doing our best to see what is happening while it is happening. Again, two different issues. The sorting out the assimilation of the work of the historian, for example, really important here. I don't think we think about social media doing the work of the historian. The political scientist, the current affairs commentator has a different problem because it's real time what's happening. And some of the social media commentators, AI, almost always AI now, therefore an odd quality, I mean, mispronunciation of relevant names and mispronunciation of a great deal, in fact. But, and I assume that with the technology that will improve, but for the moment it's not always impressive, shall we say. However, reviewing from my own position as an Asian expert, is that the three traditional ruling schools of interpretation in the Anglosphere, to the United States, and I think to Great Britain applies here, is especially the United States though, is the patriotic school, the ethical school, and the narrative-free historical fact school. And so you've got three schools: empiricism, ethics, and patriotism. And none of them's really cut it in terms of getting to the bottom of what is going on. And part of this is a matter of concentration. So my school has always been the realist one, that regardless of what my preferences are, I want to find out what is going on. I want to have a real appreciation of the dynamics of, for example, politics in Tel Aviv and Tehran, without having me weighing my preferences one way or the other. I just want to know what is really going on. And I think that responsibility should not go through a prism of ethics or patriotism or commentary-free fact citing. It has to be better than that. There has to be a narrative interpretive side to this. There has to be a framework of analysis. There has to be analysis. And fact citing is not analysis, nor putting everything through a ethical framework analysis either. It's criticism, but it's not analysis. And patriotism probably is the great mistaken approach here, because if the analysis, here we go, is anything like what appears to be true, a great number of people in Washington, for example, and Tel Aviv for that matter, and perhaps in Tehran too, didn't do their homework. They didn't do enough work. The superficial impression now, in the middle of the situation, is that the Iranians did a great deal more homework out of necessity because of the sanctions or what have you, than either Tel Aviv or Washington did. And the Washington analysis and the conventional legacy media analysis comes across as dreadfully thin when set against anyone incisive on the social media side. There's an embarrassing gap here. So, again, we're beginning to think about this. I think it's a turning point in the history and evolution of Asian studies in the West. My own feelings is that because I regard myself as an Orientalist, and I think the rubric that occurs to me is strategic Orientalism is the thing we need to think about. We need to deal with the realities of the thing, and changing the name from Middle East to West Asia isn't the transformation suggested. That I understand that shift from the old European perspective, like Far East, but at the same time, it's not the substance of the deal. The substance of the deal is knowing what's going on. I can only create perhaps the greatest of all Welsh Orientalists, Sir William Jones, who, when he went to India in the 18th century, says, "I'm going to know more about India than any European has any known." And we could have used Sir William Jones last night in the analysis of what happened in the attacks on Israel. Anyway, onward. We've got a lot of work to do.